Three Stooges TV series in January 1970.
In what?
So they were big in the 60s as a kids' TV fare.
Yeah, well, because for the most part, I mean, I guess because of the age that they started becoming popular, good. Like they weren't crass humor, well, sort of crass humor, but they weren't going to say curse words, you know.
So, you couldn't say curse words. You couldn't say curse words on the TV back then.
That's what I'm saying, though. So they could almost become like a kids show, even though it wasn't really ever designed to be a kids show.
And welcome back to another episode of Even More Mashed Up, the pop culture podcast featuring two professors talking about all things pop culture. I am Patrick.
And I am Alan. And today we are Hippo to be squared. No, we're Hippo to be square. It's Hippo to be square.
I'm both proud and disappointed in you.
I'm just largely disappointed.
To be square. See, because there's a hippo, and it's kind of nerdy. So it's Hippo to be square, not squared.
Wow.
Hippo to be square.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just nailed the greatest opening of all time.
Oh yeah,
we shall release a straw poll, and we shall see how that goes.
That was smooth and polished as far as openings go.
As I said, I had nothing prepared. All I had was Rich's waving hippo looking me in the face. So.
I was like, what do you mean inspired you? It was like because I posted a gif of that.
I blame Rich. So anyway, we're talking about Moon Knight today. Episodes
Again.
3 through... I don't think we've ever done this before. I feel like this is untrod territory for us to do the same show back to back.
We might have some back-to-back episodes for quizzes, but not for actual talking about shows.
In that case, it was just cutting up a long episode. This was where we actually planned to record two spaced out episodes we've never done. Even the Oscars, episodes. It was still just a long thing we cut up.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, I can't really.
History making.
I can't think of anything we've done
unless we count the D&D.
Oh God, no! We don't count those.
Well, no, I think we just established that those have been erased from the canon.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like they never happened.
Much like
they are. They
universe.
Are a completely separate part of the mashed up multiverse.
They are the expanded universe of the more mashed up.
But they're the expanded universe that's been blackballed.
But like Star Wars, where they just it doesn't exist anymore. It's not canon anymore.
Exactly. None of that counts. They've been Mara jaded.
If only we could do that for the game Chateau.
Okay. Did you just hear the whine from Rich when I said Mara jaded? Like that clearly cut him where he lives. Was that too deep a cut?
If you read the extended universe, you'd know.
Oh yes, I'm familiar with the significance of Mara Jade. Yes, on vague terms, but
I am happy to say that I'm not. So
yeah. So I knew how deep I was cutting when I made a Mara Jade reference.
I appreciate it. Even
anyway.
But yes,
it is Moon Knight.
Talking Moon Knight Part 2. It's like Hot Shots Part 2.
Yes, whatever that.
I didn't see Hot Shots Part 1, so
you didn't miss too much.
I'm assuming I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't feel left
out. Where would you like to start on the second half of Moon Knight, Alan?
I don't know. I thought maybe we could start by looking at a couple of points we raised on the first show. Unless that's going to be too repetitive, and then maybe let's go for it.
Yeah, let's. I mean, we should again. This is sort of the show's chance to change our opinion. We should start off with.
Yes, well, that's the big question for the episode is because we were, I think, fairly mixed at best on the first couple episodes of Moon Knight. So the question is, did it get better?
That's true. Okay,
but we weren't pro either.
Yeah, I would say we were not looking forward to a good number of the aspects of Moon Knight.
Yes, it was a mixed bag at best, and so did the bag get unmixed or did it get more mixed?
I feel like once you mix a bag, it's hard to unmix a bag.
It depends what you're mixing.
Everything's in there. Like, are you talking about taking everything out of the bag and resorting it, or just continuing to shake the bag and hope that it gets mixed?
Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what's going to happen. So,
all right. So once it's in the bag,
the veganism did not seem to get worse.
Well, I was going to say I had two predictions. One was a vegan who we could respect would arrive, and that, of course, didn't happen.
No. Yeah, to be fair, in fact, up until Rich just mentioned it, I completely forgot about the veganism. Yeah,
as did the show, apparently.
Yeah, I don't think it's mentioned in the show again.
Nope.
All you needed the veganism for was to suggest the weirdness and evil of certain characters, and then you were done with it.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that I had said they might play as a comedic moment the idea of Mark and Steven arguing over like eating a steak or something, or like being vegan, and they never did that. Right. So at least they did not play it up as more of a comedic element going forward.
No, I guess that is fair. I also did predict a 3-person love triangle, so I got that one right.
Yeah.
Though I guess not as messy as I thought they were going to do it.
Yeah,
I thought there was going to be a whole bunch of angst and like stuff.
No, it was a tiny neat triangle, but it was there.
Yeah.
Yep. Nope. That's true.
Prediction wise,
were those the two things you had, Alan?
That was it for me. Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were going for something a little more substantive.
Well,
I guess we all define substantive in different ways, probably.
I think we were pretty pessimistic about the dissociative disorder being shown as a more positive note of especially with Stevens.
And that's what I had next, actually.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
To come back to was we talked about like the DID and mental health issues and our concern that maybe they weren't doing the best job of that. How do you feel, Patrick? Like having watched the last 4 episodes, you feel better about that?
Exactly. I feel about the same. I mean, I really did. I really did like episode 5, Asylum, which is the one that delved into it the most. I would say that and the first episode were the best episodes of the series. And I not knowing DID very well, I don't know how reflective of an actual experience of DID the show is, but I feel like it maybe they went into a little bit more depth in that episode with it, but overall it still feels like a kind of over-dramatized, kind of plot-devicey depiction of the mental health disorder than a real kind of exploration of it.
Yeah, when you talk about getting a little extra depth, you're still talking about like Huddle level depth. In terms
Hollywood
of really kind of wrestling. Yeah, like I'm one of those like fuzzy-headed history professors who thinks that representation kind of matters, and I just even the asylum scene. The asylum is not an asylum; it's like an asylum on a boat that's sailing through the desert.
I also have no idea what that whole bit was about.
But to me, the asylum felt so stereotypical and so expected that I didn't think that it really added much depth. And even the story that they told about how how Steven was created felt like a really kind of pat story. I saw they were trying, but I never felt the depth. I never felt like it quite functioned like it might.
Because again, they had the whole backstory of like it was still under like 3 minutes. I mean, it was spaced out because he'd cut back and forth, but the whole backstory of Stephen Grant being created is still pretty short compared to all the other screen time for all the other plot elements. Like it's still just something to kind of bum rush through, and like it's neat. It's a neat reveal, but
is it though? Like even
compared
the neatness
to, I guess,
of it, I'm not convinced.
I guess they could have done it worse. And
that's true. That's true.
I guess that's what I expected. I guess I expected it to be a lot more of like when Mark meets Khonshu and becomes the Moon Knight. For whatever reason, they just made Steven to be the cover. Is what I was expecting to be kind of the narrative. So I guess with that, it's like, it's a bit of a neater idea.
Yeah, I thought that WandaVision, and at least trying to look at trauma over a longer stretch of episodes, did a more interesting job of it. maybe I'm too sensitive about depictions of mental health. I don't know. I honestly, I feel kind of disappointed still in the end of how they used it. I agree with Patrick. Yeah. It felt often like a plot device.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's overall. Yeah, like it doesn't. It's
and a minor plot device.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really doing. I mean, the show's not doing anything about really depicting the lived experience of DID.
Right.
It's almost kind of an incidental or kind of side aspect of the character. It's almost like it's another one of the character's quirks, and a character that's particularly Steven that's almost entirely just quirks and a British accent.
Quirky. Yeah, maybe quirky isn't the best way to kind of deal with mental health issues in media.
But I think, in general, that
affect his life. At least from the minor things we see.
Yeah, the lack of depth that you mentioned about the DID, Alan, I think is probably something that plagues the whole series. Is that there is kind of a lack of depth in the series as a whole.
I 100% agree. Even since we're talking about it, can I ask you some questions about the resolution? Don't you have an undergraduate background in psychology?
Yes, I do.
All right, excellent. So we have an expert. Yeah, we have an expert.
I have a BA in psychology from almost 30 years ago, so I have. Let's just do a quick disclaimer. You should not take anything that I say regarding the next segment of the episode as anything at all accurate or medically diagnostic, or really even competent for that matter.
But when you say medically diagnostic,
doctor than Dr. Harrow.
I don't know. When you say medically diagnostic, it sounds like you are an expert. So I feel like I can ask you some questions then.
No, I am an expert in using language to sound like I am an expert. That does not mean I am an expert on the things that I am sounding like I'm an expert on.
I would argue in response that you live in the United States of America in 2022, and that is exactly what defines expertise.
Well, that is true.
All that
is
defines
true.
Expertise.
I did do some Googling on DID on the computer, so I'm pretty sure I went to WebMD, so I'm pretty sure I know something. But yes, so
WebMD.
So Patrick Hamilton, just picture me as Lucy behind the psychiatrist office.
Charlie
Doctor
Brown. Is in. Yep.
Yes.
Oh man.
Right, so here's my question, Patrick, and it has very little to do with DID. You'll be relieved to know.
Okay.
So the resolution. Like when the scales balance after Steven falls off of the sand boat piloted by the Hippo and is lost, right?
Yes.
So can you explain that to me with your undergraduate background and degree in psychology? How exactly does this balance his scales?
Well, I mean, if you think of, Mark and Steven are two personalities in one body.
Correct.
Having the two personalities speaks to a sense of him being unbalanced, because most people only have one, so if you get rid of one of them, you've now balanced that body in that there's one personality.
So it could have been either one that went over that, and you still would have
had the balance
yes. In your...
Yes.
Okay. So it's just a matter of getting rid of the one personality.
Possibly. I mean, we don't know because Mark isn't the one who went over. Because clearly Mark is the
evil
original personality. He's not an alter.
Right.
So, it raises the question of if he went over, would Steven still persist? Or if he goes over, are they both done?
Or if he goes over, does just Mark continue? It's just so. I thought
so. Yeah,
it makes more sense for them to not have two hearts because
it seems to me that
still.
That's how how I read it. How I read it is that Mark is unbalanced because there's the two personalities being weighed, and that there's only supposed to be one, so you get rid of one, that balances the heart. That's how I read it. Whether or not that's what the creators meant, I have no idea.
Right, because so many people end up in the what's it called, the Duat, the
Duat,
the desert of of souls, who they're not there because they have two personalities. They're there because the scales of justice didn't balance in their life, which is it's weird to me because Mark killed a lot of people.
Yeah,
right? Yes. He killed a lot of people before then. How does that justify balancing the scales?
And Stephen, as far as we know, killed no people.
Yes.
Right.
So you think that Stephen falling in, like he would just be fine.
Right, like it's a very superficial kind of balancing in that way because lots of other people
but see, it
had
depends
just one
because
personality and we're fine.
Well, but you're assuming that because Amit is the one that balances the scales in terms of justice, in terms of good and evil. There's nothing saying that the Duat and what it's balancing is in fact justice. It might be balancing something else.
But it's balancing the heart, right? It seems like the
I think at one point Stephen says that it's the scales of justice, or it's.
I don't remember if they said it's justice. They're balancing the hearts, and they're very vague.
Don't they also talk about the heart at one point, like the way the Egyptians saw the heart as the
soul?
Yeah, like the soul of the person.
Because what they're talking about is the idea that you would have in the afterlife, you'd have a feather on one end and the heart on the other. And the idea was that your heart, if it was evil, would be heavier than the feather, and if it was good, it would be lighter, or as light as a feather. Thus, the good people would balance and the bad people would unbalance. But for whatever reason, throughout the entire show, they constantly show both sides of the scale going up and down, as though it's like a seesaw instead, where you need to have two sides balanced perfectly, which is not the point. The point is simply your heart's not supposed to be heavy with evil.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would have both hearts, hypothetically, if they put both hearts on the scale, they should hit the ground, so to speak, because it's two hearts, and then Stephen falling off should do nothing because Mark's heart would be the evil one still, or the one who's done evil acts.
Well, but everything Mark did was in the service of Khonshu, so is it really...
Not before he met Khonshu. He was a mercenary before he met Khonshu.
Yeah, and that's kind of the next level of my question, Patrick,
that's
right?
why he meets Khonshu, is because he's betrayed by the person who he helped or didn't stop kill what was essentially a bunch of innocents.
Yeah, Bushmen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but he did terrible things before that.
Yeah, I'm saying
we only know that's stuff we know about.
Well, but it's not. No, well, he mentions that he got drummed out of the army because he kept having blackouts, and then he said that that's when he joined Bushmen. I don't know that we ever get a sense of how long was he with Bushmen before.
So maybe he was.
So he just got lucky that he just never did anything. He didn't help anyone. I'm just saying, between the two of them, I would believe Stephen to be much nicer and gooder, or maybe.
Well, unless it's, can Stephen be good if he is a false construct? And remember, Khonshu calls him a parasite.
Khonshu is also
from the beginning.
Khonshu has kind of an agenda here.
Well, he does, but again, it raises the question of if Stephen should not exist in the first place, isn't his existence a kind of wrong?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad we settled that. Next question, Alan.
Because that's blaming somebody for existing.
Yes. Before we get to the
which we would argue is not a good thing to do, to blame somebody for just their existence.
I don't know. It depends. It depends.
Well. But before we get there,
yeah,
I understand even in the balancing the scales that Khonshu has, let's say, manipulated him, right?
Yes.
But he made a choice to do that.
Wait, when you say he, who are we talking about here?
Mark made a choice to join Khonshu.
Mark made a choice, right? He's
and you could argue he made a choice.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the choice is join Khonshu or die. I mean, you could argue that it's a kind of. You could argue it's coerced, coercion doesn't make you. If you're coerced, you're not responsible. Bada bing, bada boom. Nothing Marx does is wrong because he was coerced into it. This is Judge Patrick.
Yeah. Wow. That is a big jump from your psychology degree to your lawyer degree.
Yeah. Dr. Patrick is out, Barrister Patrick is in, and everything Mark did was under coercion. And thus he's not culpable.
And parody is protected. We've had this barrister on the show before.
Yes.
Where's your degree from, Barrister Patrick?
Exactly. I watched a lot of legal shows.
Always a good
and I feel like I have a good working
order. Yeah.
A good working. Not really Law and Order. I'm thinking more like The Practice.
Matlock. Did you watch
a little bit of L.A. Law? Night Court.
A lot
of
of Murder, She Wrote.
No, didn't watch Murder, She Wrote. That's really more about the murder than the court.
That's a fair point. It seems like you have some Jessica Fletcher in you.
No, I don't. No, I'm not really that kind. I'm more of a lawyer than a detective, for the purposes of really? This part of the conversation.
Got it.
But Patrick does bring up a good point that Stephen shouldn't have a quote unquote heart to be judged because it's still one body.
It's a very strange metaphysical moment there on the boat that I don't.
Again, it doesn't really need to happen because it's not like it really matters. Because clearly anybody can just go to the Duat and the sands and just undo it. Because?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
There's a whole metaphysics at work here that I think we are. Well, maybe Patrick has a divinity degree that he wants.
I don't, but I can pretend like I do. I am sort of a Pat of all trades, if you will.
Yes.
Oh, like the old Saturday Night Live character, Pat. She or he contained multitudes. That's pretty good.
I don't like that. I don't like that comparison.
That's so Pat.
Yeah, I know. That's unfortunately that is one of my actually decent. I use secret because it's strong enough for a man, but made for a woman. Yeah, unfortunately, Pat from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Pat from Saturday Night Live is one of my impersonations I can pull off.
You grew up a Pat, so it kind of makes sense that would be a good
I did not grow up a Pat. I've always been a Patrick, not a Pat.
Well, but you know what I mean. Anyway, if we thought people didn't know the Three Stooges, I'm pretty sure that reference here is going to fall pretty flat.
Yeah. Did you say it's going to fall pretty pat?
Yeah, I wouldn't say pretty.
Okay.
It could fall pat. Yeah. So should we move on to the final 4 episodes then?
I suppose.
Was there any other predictions? I know we covered DID, the vegan.
No, I think that was
it. I think.
Oh, actually, I was saying this before. Khonshu's not a good god, right? Just because he wants justice.
He's ambiguous, I would say, at best.
He constantly seems to be betraying the trust of the few people who work for him, and he doesn't seem to need to.
Well, when you're a god, you're not really obligated to care about the peons.
Even when they saved you from being trapped in a
I think
sand
that's fair.
statue form.
Yes.
As a Quaker, I just want to point out that none of the gods here are particularly good.
The Hippo seemed nice. Hippo God seemed nice.
I disagree with that. Do you want to talk about the Hippo God for a minute? Because
Tamurat?
I don't understand. The Hippo God confuses me.
Well, yes.
So here's what confuses me.
Mm-hmm.
After Mark ends up in the field of reeds.
Yes.
The Hippo God tells him to stay there, right? It is his
well, that's like the divine afterlife. That's the good good place to be.
And it seems like that's a job to kind of deliver people to that spot.
Nope. I totally agree with all of that. The Hippo God gets him to this place of perfect peace and tells him to stay.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
At the very same time, the very same Hippo God is talking through dead soldiers, telling Layla to free Khonshu and thus bring Mark back.
Now,
it kind of seems like the Hippo God wants it both ways.
Now, did she do that after Mark left, or Because as soon as she drops Mark off, he's like, "Oh, I can't leave Steven there," and then she's like, "You can't come back," which I also don't get. That's a weird rule for Heaven to have.
Well, I think also part of it too is that I think at least some of the stuff with Layla in the first part of the last episode, which would include when Hippo God is talking through the dead bodies,
right,
is actually happening overlapping with stuff that's going on in the fifth.
But I get what Alan's saying is that
but it seems
Hippo God is talking to Layla before Mark says to come back.
Well, remember Mark or Steven told Hippo God, tell Layla she has to free Khonshu in the fifth episode, and so that's what Hippo God is doing is doing what Mark or Steven asked her to do.
But she knows that doing that runs contrary to the advice she's giving to Mark in the Field of Reeds.
Yeah, one could argue that even if Mark stayed, Khonshu could still bring him back, hypothetically. Like, no matter what, Mark, even though Mark decides to go back to Steven, hypothetically, Layla brought Khonshu...
The whole idea is that Khonshu will revive Mark.
Right. So, her saying, hey, this is the peace you've been denied in life, enjoy it, but then going to Layla and saying, bring her Khonshu, like, she's basically saying, hey, enjoy this, while also knowing... Yeah.
Well, but it's also entirely possible that she may think... Because remember, we've been told that who Khonshu really wants as his avatar is Layla. So it's entirely possible that Hippo God thinks you're going to bring Khonshu back, but he'll just find another avatar, not necessarily bring Mark back.
It seemed pretty clear to me, though, that this was a way to bring Mark back.
Yeah,
I'd have to go back and watch it a second time.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and watch and see, but that's obviously what it ends up being. I did not read it that way.
I thought it was very clear that it was about talking to Layla to bring him back. By the way,
that's what I read, too.
When Layla did the talking to herself as an avatar, I thought that was really yucky. I did not care for that. It
felt weird
all.
And both also it also just felt weird to watch. It felt janky in just terms of how it was filmed.
Well, but it was partly that and how it was acted, but it was partly now that she also has two personalities, which are kind of funny, listening to them talk to each other. But it's not.
Well, no, one of them. I mean, no, it's.
I just felt.
I don't think it's DID. It's
entire. No, I'm saying it's not DID. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
is
that
it's
not. It's her and the Hippo God talking.
But it functions. Yeah. It functions the same way in some ways as Mark and Steven talking to each other.
Walking around looking to mirrors and stuff and talking to himself, sort of in the same way.
Right, but for him, even it's at the end, mental health issue.
Yeah, and even at the end, Mark and Steven are swapping much like the Hippo God and Layla are doing, where they're like, "Hey, Layla," and then it's me again, in the same way, again making fun of "Oh, this is just something we can do. This doesn't bother us at all now." You know?
Even though this is how it's been our mode of showing mental illness with Mark and Steven, now it's just comedic. To me, it further undercut whatever healthy kind of conversation it wanted to have about mental hygiene. It was a disaster for me.
Yeah. Well, it also causes the issue too is that when Mark talks to Khonshu, he's never talking to himself. He's always talking to Khonshu as a separate entity.
Yeah.
Whereas,
that's the thing too. Is Khonshu just shows Layla up as a person?
Right.
Yeah, why Hippo God is talking through Layla,
or the bodies
is
even
strange.
Before that.
Right.
Why is she talking to her through the body? Why can Khonshu just seem to do whatever he wants, even though he seems to have been exiled from the gods?
To me, it's a huge mess, and it's the final nail in the coffin of just not getting mental health right.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for me. I guess there were parts of the show that kind of offended me a little bit. Yeah.
It seems like it seems like you seem to have a much stronger negative reaction than you thought.
Because they keep showing so much. They keep showing so many elements of mental. The asylum, talking to the Harrow as a doctor.
People
points
drooling
where
in chairs. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's so many.
Well, and it's all very.
The
asylum's all asylum said very stereotypical.
That's just set pieces. That's just. Oh, here's a funny way to do exposition, and not that we're not actually dealing with. And there's a scene where Steven realizes his mother's died, and it's this really sad thing, and it's
right.
very you could do like short 5-second clips from the show that might show mental health as like they're showing they're dealing with mental health in a good way, but then it's like all the other stuff around it devalues that completely and like undoes anything.
Yeah, I really think it does anyway.
Yeah.
But we can talk about something else. Were there other things you wanted to talk about, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, at the end of the day, I still feel like Moon Knight was a bit of a mixed bag.
For sure.
And so obviously the depiction of mental health and DID in particular is part of that, but I think there are other ways in which that I think other things the series did that I think caused it to fall short of what I kind of hoped it would be.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't think they ever unmixed the bag. For sure.
I think part of it is I think they went into the Egyptian mythology way too hard, way too early.
In the series, it almost could have been a whole separate show about, like, almost like what's the old Brendan Fraser movie, like Mummy or whatever. Like
Mummy, yeah.
It almost felt like a show about Egypt and the Egyptian gods, and not about like, yes, there's some gods involved, but it's supposed to be about Moon Knight and all that stuff. It's like you said, it's a lot of Egyptian stuff that you almost forget that it's about Moon Knight at points.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is that this level of Moon Knight being involved with the Egyptian gods, like to the point where he's literally talking to Khonshu and Khonshu's hanging around with him, like that was a good decade to maybe 15 years into Moon Knight's existence that we got to that.
Oh, in the comic book.
And in the comics, yeah. And so jumping to that right off the bat, I think that was too much. I mean, part of it is that for a series about Moon Knight is barely in this show.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were the kind of person that cared about quantifying things, you could probably go through and add up the actual screen time of Moon Knight, and it would probably be a very small percentage of.
You wouldn't by chance know that number, would you?
The show.
From somebody else?
I did not. I did not actually do that.
Luckily, we don't have any quantifiers on this show.
Yeah. So I feel like that. I think
thing? So they did to do the special effects for because Moon Knight. The suit, like watching the GIF of him in the bathroom, like that was probably very much CG for most of that. Like I know Steven's suit seemed much more practical in terms of like not special effects, but maybe it was a budget thing. They just didn't show Moon Knight because it's like, hey, we've got to animate all his cape and all these little effects and stuff.
Well, I think it's part of the. I don't know if it's a problem with the character or if it's a problem with the show's version of the character, but because, I mean, I think about it in terms of, like, thinking about the other MCU characters. Like, Tony Stark is Iron Man. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Moon Knight is something complete. Moon Knight is completely something separate from Mark or Steven. Like, there's no sense of them, like, they are Moon Knight. Moon Knight is just kind of this thing that they put on.
Like, Steven maybe feels a bit more like Moon Knight just because he talks more with, like, the little suit and stuff. Like,
well, but in terms of the comics, the Steven / Mr. Knight character is not even close to the comics version. Because in the comics, Mark Spector is Moon Knight. Like, it's always Spector that is... Like, Moon Knight and Mark Spector are the same person. And there's no real person behind Moon Knight. It's just a set of clothes that Mark puts
Tony
on.
Stark putting on the Iron Man suit. It doesn't become a different character when he's got the suit Batman. On. It's still Tony. Yeah.
Yeah, except there's I don't know, there's just a way in which that Batman, there still kind of is a personality to Batman, whereas Moon Knight is just a cipher in this show. Like, there's nothing...
Right.
There's nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
there's
you also
nothing
see
there,
his face with Moon Knight. Like, even with Iron Man, they'll do like real close-ups of Tony Stark's face inside the suit from the emote. With this, you've got, mummy wraps, glowing eyes. There's no facial expressions happening. There's nothing besides a voice, which I don't think he talks that much as Moon Knight.
Yeah. So I mean, what the show is actually named after is a very small and very kind of empty element of the show. Like there's nothing really to Moon Knight, which leaves us with instead Mark and Steven. And particularly in terms of Steven, like I had to say by the end of the 4th episode in particular, I was exhausted of Steven. Like Steven he really started to annoy me as a character.
He's
interesting.
He's like everything, because again they show like Steven be this sort of like everything negative. It's almost like, you know, the yin and the yang, where Mark is like the practical, capable person, but then Steven's like the academic person that can't seem to function in society.
Yeah, but even then, I think it goes back to that. It goes back to that lack of depth. Like, yeah, Steven knows about Egyptian, mythology and whatnot, but it's all just like he's just a whole bunch of quirks, kind of. And I think that's part of the problem with the series too. Is Mark and Steven don't change over the course of the episode. Like they are pretty much the same throughout. Like there's no real, like I don't get a sense of even when Steven realizes that he's the alter personality, he gets over that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a lot bigger of a deal.
That's part of the problem, Patrick, is that the show is about them, and allegedly there is, like, when Mark goes back into the desert to rescue Steven, right? It's supposed to represent this major kind of conclusion to a character arc. But you don't really ever feel like there was an arc in the show. You know that they're going to do it. Another of my complaints is the plotting in that way. It just, like you're supposed to feel the character development just because, that moment happens. There's another moment where they get their hands on the Ammit statue and they just need to escape. But Layla is like all emotional and she has to work through whether or not Mark killed her dad. And they just stop for a conversation. And moments like that in shows like this drive me nuts. Like, you've got lots of time to work out that emotional issue. By the way, he didn't kill her dad. Like, it's a complete non-issue, right? All he has to do is be like, exactly. All he has to do is say, yeah, no, I didn't. I tried to save your dad. But instead, it becomes like this overly wrought emotion, like this emotional moment, because women are emotional, right? And we can just assume that Layla would be emotional and unable to kind of compartmentalize saving the world from her own moment of trauma. And it just it feels like there were several moments in the show like that where I felt like you could see the writers working to tell the story as opposed to the story actually telling the story.
Well, it's very soap opera-y in the sense that it's that moment you see in soap operas or any number of things where it's like, literally a 2-minute conversation between these two characters would solve this issue. And
in the first episode,
it's only prolonged because they aren't having the conversation that they should just naturally have.
If you're doing Days of Our Lives and you've been writing it for 35 years, like it's like, just like you're out of ideas. You'd hope that Moon Knight had some ideas.
With 6 episodes you'd think you'd have plenty of stuff to put in there to not have to...
Right. There were moments I thought you could... same with the mental health that we talked about earlier, where you could see it being written, and you generally don't want to see it being written on the screen while you're watching.
Yeah.
By the way, there were 57 seasons of Days of Our Lives.
Well, I didn't think this was a person who had been on the show for the entire run. I thought they came, 1970.
Yeah, people come and go, Yeah.
Well, no, you said Days of Our Lives for 35 years. It was like,
somebody. I was imagining a person writing Days of Our Lives for 35 years, like the individual who got hired in 1960. And just,
they have
couldn't get a job somewhere else.
I have
65. Started at 65.
All we can do at this point is like put Marlena.
Have Marlena be possessed by the devil.
Or she's possessed by the devil. Yeah.
Or bring in another Roman.
Yeah.
Oh, I meant to ask you a question about the Hippo God, Patrick. I know that you really liked Loki Gator. Were you excited when the hippo showed up?
Well, when Ammit showed up?
Not especially. I mean, I will say that one of the common complaints about and this relates more to Ammit. One of the common complaints about like the MCU in general is that however good they are, they always boil down to like a giant CGI battle. Like even the people that complain about WandaVision are like,
Seems like somebody said that on this program, actually.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I will say,
Marvel
film. It feels as if it's been made on this very show.
I will say that watching the finale of Moon Knight, I had a similar feeling in that.
Oh my God!
It basically boiled down to a giant crocodile god fighting a giant bird skeleton god, and I could see kind of like, this is what they mean. I will say, I thought the CGI on Amit was really impressive. I'm like, that is a really well done crocodile god, and I think kind of in general, I have to say,
compared to all the other ones I've seen,
yes, and I have to say that I've seen.
I have to say that there was a bit in I did on at least a small level. I did kind of enjoy the finale in the sense that a lot of it was really stupid in a kind of fun comic booky way. So
when I say that about Ghost Rider, I get crucified.
Well, because that's the whole movie.
But it's okay to do it here. So anyway, Patrick, just to be clear, when you say that we've come to this pat solution, you know where we've arrived, right?
Oh, yes, we are well past peak superhero.
We are post-peak superhero, like 100%. Like it is.
I
so
do.
much
when
of what I have said
like
is clearly coming true.
I do fear that though generally people really seem to have liked Moon Knight in a way that I find a bit baffling. Yeah, like people really liked this show, and I'm like, it's fine. I mean, I don't hate it, but it could have been part of my disappointment is that it could have been so much more.
Yeah,
like
again,
Moon Knight is a very cool character, and they kind of made him a little bit generic.
Yeah, but again, it's that Marvel issue of like when you have so many hits that now when you do mediocre, it looks that much worse because you know what they could do. Yeah. You've seen them do good stuff, and now it's like you can't just phone it in.
In retrospect, Rich, like, have we really seen them do good stuff? Like, they did some entertaining stuff.
But
they never really reached art.
Excuse me.
I could understand.
Excuse me, sir.
This colors how I see everything that came before it. I'm like, no, it's all just part of that formula.
And Alan,
no. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. No,
we do.
No.
We do.
I just did.
It's growing up. It's Alan. I
say
it's
no.
Back and it's realizing
as a professor, as barrister, as amateur psychologist, I do not allow you to do that. No. But, you don't get to go back saying, hey, all those episodes where, like, say, I really liked Winter Soldier? That movie's crap now.
Oh, no, I didn't say crap. I think Winter Soldier remains, like, a really well-made superhero movie. But I don't know. I think I'm a little exhausted, probably.
Well, no, and what I think it is that we saw stuff like Winter Soldier, and we assumed, this is what they're doing now. 5 years from now, think how much better it's going to be, and it's not. So now we're looking back on this stuff and being more realistic. Like, okay, that was pretty good, but I think at the time we thought that meant, this is the tip of the iceberg, and it's getting so much better.
But of course, what we miscalculated on was the success of Marvel doesn't encourage them to keep pushing boundaries like maybe they tried to a little bit with Winter Soldier.
That is correct.
And I
what
think
the success does for them
they were going
to
keep pushing
them
boundary.
to become safer and safer and safer. And I think
the plateau.
If you just track the Disney Plus stuff, I mean, WandaVision had a great concept, but I would argue, since then it's just kind of been
and Loki
safe and safe.
Whoa! You're forgetting one thing, my friend.
No, Loki.
No, you're forgetting Hawkeye.
Soldier? Oh, I know what I was forgetting.
You're forgetting Hawkeye, which was excellent.
Nobody forgets Hawkeye because nobody's looking for Hawkeye.
That is, was Hawkeye was again.
God knows if you're on this podcast, you can't forget Hawkeye. It's like Hawkeye.
No matter how much you try, no matter how much medication you take, you cannot
matter how hard you run away from Hawkeye. Hawkeye always tracks you down on this show.
No matter how many asylums 100%. You go
that's
to,
because he's a very good archer and tracker. That's like his skill set. He hunts you down.
Like Aragorn, we know, we get it.
No. It's Aragorn.
I know. That's your Mara Jade moment.
Aragog is the spider in Harry Potter. Aragorn is the guy in Lord of the Rings. God, it's like you don't pay attention to what I say at all.
God. Gosh.
Anyway, I got you all riled up, Patrick.
Oh, yes. I'm just not going to allow you to go back and rewrite your personal history on this show.
No, I'm saying
you are not
to change my mind over time. That is literally
you can change your mind, but you're not allowed to say, this makes everything that I liked before crap.
To a better conclusion. No, Now, I did not say crap. I'm just saying, looking back,
it was an implied crap.
Perhaps we were a little overly enthusiastic as people who grew up on comic book culture.
Blasphemy.
Don't worry, Patrick. They're going to knock it out of the park with Morbius. It's going to reinstate you.
God, no.
Morbius. I did not see Morbius, so
I did not. I have not seen any of the Sony. I have not seen either of the Venoms.
Wait for you to see that.
It's that bad.
No.
Huh?
Oh, it's. I cannot. I wish we could. Yeah. I wish we could record the episode live, so that right after you watched it in the car, we could record it.
Yeah,
that's
I watched.
I didn't. Idea actually.
That's not a bad idea. I didn't watch the Venoms until they were
just for that.
Yeah, I didn't watch the Venom movies until they were on Amazon Prime for $3.99. I have even less a desire to see Morbius.
Man, watching that in the theater, knowing how much money I paid for it.
We should. Man. What we should do is go up to Music, watch a movie, and then sit down in that little cafe area and do an instant analysis.
Like, I would love to do Morbius like that. I think it'd be great to watch your reactions to something like that, because, man...
Oh, no, Morbius just looks... Good. I mean, number one, who thought a Morbius movie was a good idea in the first place? I mean, that's
Apparently Jared Leto did.
There's a guy whose opinion you should trust.
Yeah, he is somebody who makes good judgment calls.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, we got to be pushing like 50 minutes. I have a couple of questions for
58.
you. Maybe you can answer as a comic book expert.
All right, I am ready. That's what I'm here for. Okay, I gotta change back to comic book nerd.
Yeah, hang on, take your hat off. Yep, swap it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not a tough transition. At the end, Harrow is in an asylum, right? Why does his asylum look like Mark and Steven's asylum on the boat?
Budgets.
Yeah. Why get another asylum when you already have a set?
Are you actually going to build?
Shot it in the dark the whole time, right? It was just to save money on.
I do have to say, I think we had that conversation. I think it was after episode 4 where you complained about like how dark everything was.
Yeah.
And I told you, I was like, you've got to get your TV fixed, because that is, I don't remember it being that dark.
Right.
So I then went back and watched episode 4.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap, this thing's dark. Alan was right.
It's like, whoa, can we tag that, Rich? Could I just have that as a soundbite that I could play? Because I don't think it's ever been said on this podcast. But it was like listening to a radio show.
Yeah, there were a couple scenes where I was like, oh no, I now know what Alan's talking about. Like, I can't tell what's going on here.
Yeah,
like,
I had subtitles on for a lot of the show.
Yeah. So
you had to just have color on the screen.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I put on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and it's perfectly bright, and they're always in a dingy, dark bar. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you were correct. There were, particularly in episode 4, there were some scenes that it was ridiculously dark.
Yeah.
Is that a thing now with these Disney Plus shows, that they have budgets?
Yes, it is.
Small budgets.
Yes.
No, they don't have the budget that the films do. Yeah.
Do you remember the critique we made of the Flash's CG way back when like Gorilla Grodd was on?
Oh God.
It's the same thing. It's just not that bad yet.
It's not. Yeah. It's still a TV budget.
Right. The CG. Yeah.
It's Marvel money versus DC money, but it's still not enough money to really do the CG.
But it's also TV money versus movie money. So
I guess I just assumed Disney TV money was better than regular TV money.
Yes, it is, but that still doesn't get you. That doesn't give you. That doesn't get. So yeah. So there's like regular TV, DC TV, Marvel TV, Marvel movies.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's a cost cutting thing, and I find it very alienating.
So yes, I am.
Another reason to complain about superhero movies more broadly. They're too dark.
Yeah. Both in lighting and in tone.
Right. Not to say that they're crap, but perhaps overestimated.
They could have done better.
I think that's
with
true.
That ending that we're talking about,
So that was... Oh, sorry, Alan said he had a couple questions.
Oh, was it? I'm sorry, was it one?
Oh, yeah, there was one more. Were you excited that the Scarlet Scarab finally showed up in a movie?
I gotta say, that was I had to look that up. I'm like, what the heck are they doing there? And I'm like,
wait, what is Scarlet Scarab?
Yep.
Scarlet Scarab is an actual character in Marvel who appeared, I think, in like 4 issues of The Invaders and an issue of Thor in the 70s. It's actually
when was it in Moon Knight?
It's who Layla's father in the show is named similarly to.
Oh wait, so is that what Layla became?
That's her superhero.
She's never called. Yeah, she's never called that in the show. She is the Scarlet Scarab. That was, I think, for me. I think that might be even more than the crocodile bird skeleton fight. When she becomes Scarlet Scarab, I'm like, yep, this is just stupid. Like, kind of fun, but stupid.
Ghost Rider, which we should celebrate, but we won't.
No, Ghost Rider's just not, no. So, I also thought, because the director, there were a number of people that compared her costume and the wings to Wonder Woman's costume in Wonder Woman 1984.
I had big Wonder Woman vibes when she.
Well, the director of Moon Knight, in several interviews, has talked about how much he hated Wonder Woman 1984 for its depiction of Egypt, and I think this was a very conscious critique of.
Interesting.
Weird. I mean,
because one of the things the director said he wanted to do was he wanted to combat stereotypical depictions of Egypt and Egyptians, like in Wonder Woman 1984, with what he did in Moon Knight.
You know, it's interesting that when Layla gets the wings, the Wonder Woman comparison, her hair looks like a lot like a George Perez kind of Wonder Woman.
Well, the costume's a very George Perez-y costume.
Yeah, which might be a moment just to pay our respects to George Perez, who of course just passed away.
Well, and one of the all-time greats. And him and Neil Adams within weeks of each other. God, just it makes the book I'm writing on Perez right now a little bit tougher.
Yeah, and yet all the more meaningful. So.
Yeah. I mean, you knew it was coming. I mean, he was diagnosed almost a year ago, and it's. Yeah. I had a feeling because a couple days before he actually passed, his wife or whoever's running his social media posted an update basically saying, just letting you know, George had a great day. He's resting very comfortably. He's at peace, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're getting close here.
Yeah.
But just
sad news.
I mean, it's hard to think of someone more synonymous with comics and with superhero comics and superhero teams in general, particularly in the 80s, than Perez. Like, he's
in many ways, he's the guy that got me to read comics. It was the New Teen Titans that made me my first comic, a serious comic book reader.
Yeah, my first comic I bought, Avengers 164, has a Perez cover on it. Like that's the first comic I owned. Even though he didn't do the interiors. But yeah, in 1980s comics, like, there's Perez and there's John Byrne. Like, those are your two big guys of, superhero comics in the 1980s. Like, it doesn't really get much bigger.
If you had to get a beer with one or the other, you would definitely get the beer with George Perez.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, I mean, Perez is famous for how great he was with fans.
Right. John Byrne maybe a little bit less so.
John Byrne just, not great with people.
Exactly.
So Perez is to lose him. Yeah, it's a huge loss in comics.
A huge loss for humans.
Period.
He was just a good human.
Yeah, he's someone that everyone agrees was a great person. A great creator, a great person. Like, I don't know anyone that doesn't like George Perez. So very sad for his loss.
Yes. Yep. So anyway, we are going to start pressing for time here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Jake Lockley appearance.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that I think for someone who's not new with the comics, is that a thing in Moon Knight?
Yep. Okay. That's the third personality. Again, like so much else in the show,
he needed another one.
It is nothing. It is not. Jake in the comics is a cab driver, and he's basically
driving a limo here. So.
But he's basically Mark's, kind of man on the street getting like, finding out where stuff is going on. Here, he's clearly meant to be a much more murderous version.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, it was subtle, but yeah. I also do. It is one of my theories on Moon Knight, though.
Yes.
Is that because at the beginning of the episode, Steven has that date with the girl that works in the museum that he doesn't show up for, that he doesn't know about it.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
He doesn't know what day it is.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense for Mark to have asked that woman out because he's still got feelings for Layla. I think it was Jake that set up that.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that there are moments throughout where Jake is there.
Well, there's two moments where Jake. Mark blacks out and doesn't know what happens.
Yeah, there's one where he's fighting the guys.
Right.
And Steven wasn't. There's the one where he wakes up and finds that he's stabbing a guy. And says, Steven, what did you do? And Steven has no idea. And then there's the defeat of Harrow.
Yeah, which, I mean, was kind of neat that we just skipped the fight, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I actually did like that. I was like, well, that's clever, because we're avoiding...
If they skipped the fight and they didn't have the giant CG battle, it would have been neater.
Yeah, well, we talked about that a little bit at the beginning, on the first episode as well, of the podcast covering Moon Knight, that it was an
because that happened a lot more, in the car chase.
Well, and that's the other thing is the first episode just showed this show as having so much potential.
Yeah, that's why.
And then for episodes 2 through 4, it just veered in into a very kind of by the book, the Mummy / Indiana Jones kind of action adventure-y type thing. And then 5 kind of got us back to, I think, what the show could have potentially have been. But yeah, like I really wish we had gotten a Moon Knight that was more like the first episode.
Yeah, and can I tell you what most disappoints me about that ending? It sets up a season 2, if there's going to be a season 2.
Well, there's been a lot of debate about that.
I know, but if there is it clearly leaves you on a cliffhanger, right? Because
it does.
We now know that there is Jake. I don't really think I want to sit through another 6 episodes of them retelling this story again. Which feels like that's what it's setting up, right? Right after Mark and Steven kind of find peace with each other. Well, now we're going to do it all over again. I find it
and it's
very
not like Jake is an interesting enough character you think it's worth it. Like, he's clearly just some crazy murderer person. Like,
and it's just going to be...
That Khonshu had, like, as his backup so that he still... I don't understand why Khonshu can't just find somebody to be his avatar. Like, he's basically going and saying, hey, do you want to be my Batman, essentially? And there's really nobody else who actively wants... Like, doesn't need to be dying. That doesn't
you could actually find people... Couldn't you find people who would be much more willing to carry out all of the violence that you want carried out?
I think that's Jake. I think that's Jake's supposed to be that.
But why does he need? Why can't he just leave Mark alone and just go to somebody else
who these other personalities?
Right? Because again, at some point, if like Alan Brighton is going to be a second season,
but maybe Jake is just too perfect of a psychopath.
Nobody's that perfect of a psychopath. There's got to be other psychopaths. I don't even know what
that means. It's like the world's most perfect psychopath. Oh, again, you do have a psychology BA, so you could be right. Like maybe there is
Khonshu has to tiptoe around Mark and Steven at finding out, and they tried that with Mark and Steven, and eventually Steven found out. So it's like eventually they're going to find out about Jake, and then now you have...
Are they, though? Because they've had twice where they've literally both blacked out and killed people.
Right,
and they just moved
on. As many people are living a normal life now.
Eventually, they're going to figure it out. There's no doubt about it.
They didn't figure it out because they were both in fight scenes. Now, both of them, Mark and Steven, are living a normal-esque life, and then they're both going to be like, "Hey,
they can start talking to each other,
and we're covered in blood, and we went somewhere or something." And Mark's way less naive than Steven. It just seems like Alan said that there's got to be people anywhere on the planet who'll jump.
Right.
To...
And just do what you're told, without all the complications.
Who would want to be, who would actively ask Khonshu, okay, what's my next mission? What's my next whatever?
But remember, Harrow was Khonshu's avatar before. Maybe that was the problem with Harrow, is that Harrow was too into what Khonshu did. And so he needs someone that's a little less...
I mean, Harrow left him.
I thought Harrow rejected Khonshu, not the other way around.
He did. So
but Harrow rejected him because Khonshu didn't like because Harrow's justice was too extreme for Khonshu.
So Khonshu kicks him out. Khonshu fires him and gets somebody else. There's 8
just find
billion
the perfect
people
psychopath.
on the planet.
That's how hard is that?
But there's only one Jake.
Eternal.
Is there only one Jake? Like I'm not convinced of that.
Yes. Well, because again, Khonshu doesn't want someone that's like going to eat the organs of the people. He just wants them to be killed. You got to find that sweet psychopath spot.
There's 8 billion people on the planet.
I feel like, despite your psychology BA, you have stumbled into it once again today, my friend.
I'm sorry, I stumbled into a what?
Just it. You've just kind of stumbled into it.
I feel like you're sublimating.
Like your introduction last week,
words.
your conclusion this week, I feel. I don't know. I feel like I don't know where to turn at this point. I think psychopathic spot is really the landing point for a show like this.
Hard to say. Well, I mean, we don't have a giant crocodile god to fight in the background.
No, we do not.
Liam Neeson.
So, but I mean, that's the thing. Like the Moon Knight that we saw in the first episode never would have ended with a giant crocodile fight.
No, it would have been much
so
more
it feels like it swerved into something very different from what it could have been.
Moon Knight would have been good though either.
Yeah, I agree with Rich on that one.
Episode Moon Knight had Steven being
maybe not a giant avatar. Yeah,
I think part of it too is I think they could have maybe done more. Like they could have spread out the revelation that we get at the end of episode 1 to later in the series. Like it could have been more about
I guess maybe if you had
Mark and Steven, because part of it is part of it is it's in episode 2 I think where Mark just says, "You really want to know what's going on? Okay, I work for Khonshu, the god of vengeance. I died. He resurrected." Like it's just a massive info dump. I'm like, oh, okay, so we're just dumping that right there.
It's
I feel like
info dump though that also doesn't even help the audience that much because we don't know what Khonshu really is. We don't know why. It's still without context because again we are still Steven at this point. We don't know even who Mark is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point,
I don't know. I see. I don't know how it would do it, but I see episode 1. I mean, even when you think about it, we have the jackals running around in the first couple of episodes, and then they're never seen again.
Oh yeah.
Well, nobody can see him to begin
and also,
with, which is something
why,
I still
if
don't
Amit
understand.
is a crocodile god, why does Harrow summon jackals?
Because it's Egyptian.
But again,
that's all.
Yeah, but again, this is a show that's supposed to kind of do better than that kind of.
Why can't Harrow take on 3 gods at once?
Yeah,
at the end.
It's
with he's not even Amit's not even resurrected at this point, so I don't even know why he has that much power to take on 3 gods.
No, Amit has been resurrected at this point. Amit's the crocodile god.
No.
Amit's been freed.
The way in which, the way in which that all the gods are just easily misled into thinking that Amit's going to be cool this time around or whatever. It's just
the gods are so stupid. The other Egyptian gods, when Harrow's Mark's he's bringing Amit back, and Harrow's no, I'm not, and they're oh, okay.
He said he wasn't. I mean, I don't know
why are you
ends up
trusting
dying.
Harrow?
Right, and there you
I thought maybe
writing.
there was going to be
Again,
something the other
right
gods or some of them were in cahoots with Amit, but no.
I even saw a post on social media that's that's why Osiris let it happen because he wants Amit to come back and judge people.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
He's
but
just
no.
stupid.
No, because then they're in episode 5 or 6, whatever it is, they're Amit's back. Who did it? And they're oh, Harrow. I'm yes. What anyone should have been able to predict that Harrow was doing.
How do you guys not watch over where Amit's buried to make sure people don't just walk in and take it?
It is a complete mystery. A complete mystery.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess of a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So I think then the conclusion is they took the mixed bag and they shook it up and it only got more mixed. It's mixed.
Yeah. It's again, there were moments that showed the potential of the show, but by and large, for me, it did fall short of it. And thus I am forced to worry if we are in fact, post-peak superhero.